Let's cross live to Washington and correspondent Fraser Jackson. Fraser, we're getting messaging threefold this Monday. Later, it'll be the US Secretary of State briefing Congress, and the day began with the War Secretary speaking.
Yeah, there's a bit of mixed messaging really coming from the White House. They have said that this was going to be kind of a short thing, but now they're saying it's going to take 4 to 5 weeks. Donald Trump now saying that this mission could go on as long as he needs. And that was also something that was echoed by Pete Hegseth earlier in the day. He said this is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change. And Pete Hegseth was the first of any US official to kind of give a vague outline of what the aims of this mission are. We heard it again from Donald Trump just there in the East Stream of the White House. They effectively said that Iran was using its missile and drone program as conventional shield for their nuclear blackmail program, and they basically said that the aim is to destroy Iran's offensive missiles, the production of missiles, as well as the Navy and the infrastructure around the Navy, and ultimately to deny Iran a nuclear weapon and also to stop it from being able to prop up other proxy groups in the region. Well, Pete Hegseth this morning was asked about the length of this operation and whether it could spiral into something that was more long-term beyond the 4-week period that Donald Trump initially had mentioned at first to my colleague Nikki Schwab from the Daily Mail on Sunday. And Pete Hegseth said this is not Iraq, this is not endless. This is the opposite. However, he also said that the US would not be using what he said, no stupid rules of engagement. He also said the US would not be involved in nation building. He said there'd be no democracy building exercise, no politically correct wars. So I think this really is an interesting moment now, because this then is different to what we've seen from Donald Trump in Operation Midnight Hammer, where it was a kind of one strike and done scenario. Very similar as he did in Venezuela, where they surgically removed Maduro from Venezuela. This then is a very different situation. This is going to be weeks long, with the military itself recognizing that this is a longer term mission. Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that it will be difficult and gritty work, and said that more troops were going to be sent to the area as well. And interestingly, from the Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and also from Donald Trump, not ruling out boots on the ground. Hegseth saying we'll go as far as we need earlier in the day, and that will likely not go down well with the American public, who, of course, Donald Trump was elected on a platform of America First and putting an end to these, what Pete Hegseth called dumb forever wars.
Yeah, and we heard Pete Hegseth at that press conference. We could take a listen to him now, Fraser. He had stated that the objectives were, according to him, destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. But then when he was asked about whether that was the same as Israel's objectives, this is what he responded.
Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history.
Okay, so a jab there at the Europeans, and this was before the UK Prime Minister told Parliament that Britain was staying out of it for now. But regarding whether or not this is about regime change, it's not quite clear.
Yeah, this is, again, something that the US have kind of moved around on. Donald Trump has said in the past it wasn't about regime change. Pete Hegseth this morning said it wasn't about regime change. But then Donald Trump, in his video message that he posted on Truth Social last night, said that America has the backs of the Iranians and told Iranians to get out into the streets and basically do their part. So for somebody who says that it's not about regime change, he's still certainly, pushing that forward for at least on the part of the Iranians as well. And of course, the Israelis certainly want to see a change of regime at the head of Iran, because of course this has been a thorn in their side for decades now. So there's a kind of double messaging going on here, and the White House is kind of speaking out of both sides of its mouth. But for now, the aims that they have clearly have been unfulfilled. They still are continuing in these aims, and Donald Trump says that despite the fact that the US is much ahead in the timeline than they thought it would be, it will certainly still be going on for some weeks or months. I think a very telling thing was what Donald Trump said to Jonathan Carr from the New York Times late on Sunday, when he said that they'd kind of had in their mind a couple of people who would replace Khamenei if and when he was eliminated. But Donald Trump said that the strike that they'd carried out on Khamenei's compound was so successful that the number 2 or number 3 guy that they thought was going to replace him was also killed in those strikes. So it seems that right now the US doesn't really have even an idea of who would be put forward to replace Khamenei in that role at the top of the Iranian structure.